Well, I just wanted to say hello. My name is Jackie Betts. I'm the city administrator and really appreciate all of you taking the time to meet with the city tonight regarding fees for user groups at city parks. We know this is a very emotional topic. We all care so much about the Gladstone community. And so from the city's perspective, we wanted to take a step back. Last summer, we decided, let's let everybody get through their tournaments and their sports schedules, and then let's get everybody together and just listen to what the concerns are about the proposed fees. What are we not paying attention to, and see if we can find some creative solutions. So before we get started, I think it's important that we have some introductions because you have some elected officials participating, you have some Parks and Recreation Board members participating, and you have city staff. So we're all ears today. And so I think what we'll do first of all is I'm going to go around on my screen and start with Councillor Alexander.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. And then Councillor Todd.
Yep, I'm here. Hello.
And Councillor Hartman.
Hi, Anessa's here. I'm at the park multitasking with kiddos, so I'll be in and out, but I'm listening. Excited to be here.
And then we have two members of our Parks and Rec board. We'll start with Nancy.
Up here.
Nancy Turner and Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
And then why don't we just start with Jeff? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jeff Marco. I am the president of Gladstone Junior Baseball.
Thank you. How about Bill? Pickleball.
Yeah, I'm Bill Preble, the president of the Gladstone Pickleball Club. We're also, okay, there's somebody else. Yeah, that's it.
Scott?
Scott Busick, president of Gladstone Soccer.
Hi, Scott. Donna? Are you there, Donna? I think.
Yeah, I'm just, okay, there we go.
Oh, there you are.
Took a second.
Who else do we have? I have John who's connecting to audio.
And who's Donna with? I just want to make sure that everybody knows who everyone is. Which sports team?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out who was talking to me.
Sorry.
I'm Pickleball.
Okay, Pickleball. Thank you.
And Bill Preble should be getting on soon.
And I'm sorry, I jumped in a few minutes late. I just got off another Zoom call. I'm Marty Loeb. I'm the executive director of the Campbell course, the children's home of the children's course.
Oh,
hi, Marty.
Hello.
I'm not forgetting our public works director. I just wanted to see, did I get in everybody in to say who they are and where they're from? Great. Okay, and we do have our public works director, Darren Canaperoli, and I will just say that when Darren first started here, he was handed this task, and it's a difficult conversation anytime you're implementing fees or starting to charge fees for services. That can be pretty controversy. And so, like I said, we really wanted to take a step back. What I'm going to do is have Darren just give a brief overview of what we went through this past year. And then we're going to just kind of open it up to the different user groups to talk about what they would like to see the city do in relations to user fees for the sports group. So with that, Darren, do you want to give a brief summary?
Sure, I can do that. I don't know that we need to go all the way back to 2017 when the Parks Master Plan was originally done talking about the fees for everything, but I can get us going from, we'll start in March of 2021 The city council heard public comment on a resolution adopting the master fee schedule for park users fees. Representative from the user groups made public comment during that meeting. And there was really no resolution from that. City council concluded that the matter should be referred back to the Parks Board for further discussion. So with that further discussion, the city completed a survey of park user fees in June of 2021 of surrounding areas that included Oregon City, Happy Valley, Westland, North Clackamas Parks and Rec, as well as field location based on user groups games scheduled for comparison. We met with the user groups to discuss the fee options and expectations from both the city and the user group. In June of 2021, we met with baseball, softball, and soccer. In June of 2021, we met with the pickleball group, and then we met back up with the user group, or with the baseball, softball, and soccer on July 1st. During those meetings, we discussed who was going to maintain what, how things were going to be maintained. We came up with, when I say we, the city came up with a fee schedule to be able to charge the groups. We had lots of discussion with baseball, softball, and soccer. Pickleball, we met with them. It was a pretty low-key thing for pickleball. They didn't have any problems with paying the fees that we were suggesting. When we got to the baseball, softball, and soccer, there was a lot of discussion on the fees, and not only that, also the fee machine that was recently installed at that time. Ultimately, I think what the city took to council and to Parks Board was to charge a $20 fee for baseball and softball, and a $15 fee to soccer. And this is a per year fee, meaning like with soccer, they have a spring season and a fall season. They'd only players that if players played in both the fall and the spring, they would only be charged once. If they only played in spring, they'd be charged. If they only played in fall, they'd be charged. So the reason that we wanted to go with a per player fee was mostly because trying to figure out who's going to be on what field, when they're going to be on that field, how long they're going to be on that field for any of the different leagues is very hard to do. We figured it would be easier for everyone if we did just a per player fee. And we based the reason that you have baseball and softball being more is because the city actually does a lot more work for baseball and softball. We prep fields before the season starts. There's an expense there. We prep fields before every baseball or softball game. There's an expense there. So we tried to offset some of that cost for the additional prep that takes place for those different leagues. We had a lot of conversation. I believe at some point we got down to a $10 for soccer and a $15 for baseball, but ultimately nothing was ever finalized. So we left it at that. And then we as the city kind of regrouped and looked at everything and came to the determination that with COVID still going on, the new implementation of the fee machine down at Meldrum Bar, that maybe now is not the time to look at these fees. And so that pretty much brings us up to date. We wanted to get more players involved, people from council, people from Parks Board, and get everybody in a room together and discuss which is the best way to go forward with this. So.
Thank you, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a clean slate. We're here. We're not making any decisions today. This is an opportunity for the elected officials and the Parks and Board members here to kind of hear about what the concerns are from the user groups. Would anyone like to volunteer to go first?
Administrator Betts?
Yes.
Could you please point out to me who's from Parks and the Parks Board presently on the
Nancy Turner and
okay.
Stephanie Phipps.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi,
Hi,
Jeff.
everyone. I was gonna say I'm happy to share my ideas, but I can wait till for Jeff.
Okay. I always seem to go first in these conversations. So if Scott or anybody else wants to go first, I always seem to steal everybody's thunder and kind of go through everything. But I don't mind going first. That's fine. So I guess I'll just be really brief, and then I'll leave some details for the rest of the group to talk about. But for as far as baseball is concerned, we use 3 fields down at Meldrum. We also use Derek's Field, but most of the talk has been Meldrum Bar. We are a nonprofit organization. Obviously, it's all about the kids. Baseball is an expensive sport when it comes to all the gear and paying for umpires and everything. And we do offer a lot of scholarships. So if any kid gets free or reduced lunch at school, we offer them the same thing. If they get free lunches at school, we give them a free registration. If they get reduced lunch, then they show us that paperwork, and then we give them a reduced registration cost. So if you go by our numbers, it's not really a true amount of money that we bring in. And adding more fees on top of that, whether it's $20 per player or something, although I don't know if it will necessarily price out people. Like if that wouldn't be enough for everybody to say, well, I'm not going to sign up for baseball now. It's $20 more than it was last year. But you got to take into consideration that 40% of our players get at least free or reduced. So we'd be paying for them. We basically have to either increase registration $30 or $40 per player to help pay for the kids that play for free or reduced, or increase our fundraising and everything else. And then that is all still acceptable to us. We can make that work. We just want to know what we're paying for, because part of the conversations have been, you got to pay for a field use fee, but also within a matter of a couple of years, the plan was to us take care of our own fields 100%. So then what would be the point of paying the city if, now I know this is all in discussion, nothing's been set, nothing's been finalized, but that was discussed, that we would have to drag our own fields. We would have to do all of our own work down there, all of our own preseason maintenance and whatnot. So then what does that what does that additional cost pay for? With baseball, you have to have a storage facility. We have to drag the fields. We have screens, we have chalkers, we have all sorts of stuff. And there's no permanent structure down there at Meldrum to store anything. And again, that was told that was on us to figure out. So the $20 fee is one thing, but it seemed to have just kept snowballing a little bit to where we got really uncomfortable really fast. And then on top of that, the kick to the midsection was the parking fee to have all of our incoming teams now have to pay to come watch their kids and grandkids play. And again, this is youth sports, and we don't feel like having people having to pay to watch their kids play is the right thing. Different subject. There's the player use fees. I know that, but it's just, it kind of, for us as an association, it kind of all rolls into one big ball. So I won't get into too much more than that, because I usually talk for about 15, 20 minutes here, and then nobody else has anything to say. So I'll kind of leave it at that. Our biggest concern is not the $20 per player. We can figure that out. It's just, what are we getting for that? Is that going to continue getting us at least adequate field maintenance? Because it has not been great over the last couple of years. I get why, but we put a lot of work in there ourselves. We put a lot of work into the fields ourselves. And if we're going to be paying for something, I'd like to just see some results. That's all. So I'll finish with that.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
Stephanie, did you want to say something at this point?
Yes, sure. I apologize for that. My internet became unstable, so I had to hardwire in. So yes, I'm on the Parks and Recs board, and I've been serving on the board for about a year. I've been in the community for about 6 years, and I volunteered with Fognap at the nature park for about a year. So as was mentioned in the beginning, I know when costs and fees come up, it is a very sensitive subject, especially during these times. I also share, I'm a commercial real estate appraiser, so I see the inflation in every aspect of life, from development to, you know, the cost of our food. And I understand it is a touchy subject, but the other thing is that the city of Gladstone doesn't have a lot of land. And we, the tax dollars, the tax revenue that might be brought in by, say, commercial development or higher density residential development, which I'm sure we all disagree with. You know, for instance, they wanted to convert the nature park to commercial development, and the community stopped that, gratefully so. And so I feel Gladstone has this amazing thing. One of the reasons that we moved here was the parks. I couldn't believe how much park systems that we have within this, I think, 4 square mile radius of our city limits. And they're free. And I came from Southeast Portland, and when I came here and I was like, I can go rent a picnic table at why can't I think of the name of the park by the school down by John Wetton, but I can go rent a picnic table at Max Patterson, have a splash park, have balloons, have a party, and it's free. And in Portland, you have to reserve the table, you know, pay $40 or whatever to have that party. So I was pretty impressed that I'm living in a city with free parks, but I'm also understanding these parks have to be maintained. And, you know, I don't know the solution. I definitely think that there should be breaks for residents. I was looking at some fee schedules prior to this meeting this afternoon. I looked at City of Portland, I looked at Westland, I looked at Lake Oswego. You know, they have resident fee, non-resident fee. They have, you know, they have refundable option, non-refundable option. So if you reserve it, you know, and you need possibly a refund, I think it was $2 less. For the non-refundable option. So there's a lot of options down with the fees. That being said, with the sports thing, I understand the sensitivity of that because this is our children and our youth. And especially in these days and times, they need to get out. They need to be out in the outdoors playing. And how to balance that, I'm not sure. I 100% support free parking during games. I do think that that is an issue to have every family member come in and have to pay the fee to go park and watch their kids play. How you balance the people that are coming for the games and the people that aren't, I don't know. I don't have that answer. These are, I don't have the solutions. These are just some of my thoughts. You know, and one of the things I was thinking about, so I ordered Girl Scout cookies yesterday, and one of the options I had was to donate a free box because they're trying to gain money for their group to go to Disneyland. And so I thought, if we do have to charge $10 for each kid to play for the season, or $20, you know, maybe some of the families could choose to, you know, donate a fee for maybe some of the families that can't afford those fees. So I think just seeing what I'm seeing, I know everybody's frustrated about these tolls potentially coming in, now fees on top of our parks. Now we have to play to get our kids out into nature. I understand it's overwhelming. Groceries have gone up, it's overwhelming. But we also have beautiful parks and we have to maintain them, and we don't have enough tax dollars to maintain them through our basically 90% residential, single family residential development. So thank you for listening.
Who would like to go next?
I'll speak up. I'm, again, Marty Loeb. I'm the executive director of the Campbell course. And I'm in a situation here that's similar to Jeff in terms of the kids that we represent and the kids that we have in our program. I don't get charged a user fee because we don't take part in any of the fields. We have our own golf course, but we do access our golf course and our learning center through the park. So we've been charged $3 for each person that goes through the park, which is a pretty expensive fee for when I'm scholarshiping over 30% of our kids. For an 8-week session of golf class, we charge $80, which is nothing compared to what I pay for my daughter to play other sports. So we are a very affordable thing, and a lot of our parents can't afford the $3. We're finding that I'm having to pay for my coaches to park, and we're trying to park on our property, but still parents come to the parking lot and they park there just to wait for their kids to finish class or drop their kids off, and they're still having to pay the $3, or they're told you can't stay here 5 minutes while your children crosses the little street, which I would stay there too as a parent. So just especially if my kids were younger. So we're finding ourselves in a situation where we're not really utilizing the park. We're just parking there. We're driving through. So I don't know what the solution is at all. I just want to express that I could completely understand that we need to pay for our parks, and Meldrum Bar Park is an amazing park. And it serves a lot of people. But again, we're not even utilizing the park. If some of my parents were stopped there and decided to walk through the park and go to the garden and go do something, I completely understand that. But to just drop a kid off or to wait for their child while they're sitting in their car doesn't seem something that my parents should have to pay $3 for, and that I have to budget for or charge parents more when we're already strapped with fundraising. So just my 2 cents, maybe 3 cents.
Thank you.
I could go.
Hi, Donna, go ahead.
I'm Donna from Pickleball, and when we met last year with Darren, I think when we walked into the meeting, there were 2 of us there that we kind of felt like user fees were inevitable. And so we said that when they were talking in the neighborhood of $15, that felt like if they're Google, Facebook, Apple, AOL, YouTube, Dropbox. I'm getting some feedback from somewhere, but in any case, if they were inevitable, we felt like we could, the $15 that Darren mentioned was something that, we could work with. Our concerns at the time, and maybe still are, is just kind of what is that fee going toward? Like, just as an example, with the great weather we've had, the bathrooms at Meldrum Bar at Max Patterson are shut down right now. And the weekend we had a lot of pickleball players there. Plus the park was jam-packed with families and kids on the playground and everything. And we've been there. This is our 4th season there, and the bathrooms have not been closed in the winter before. So that came up as, kind of like, well, they're going to add a user fee, and yet they've taken away one of the most important kind of things in the park. You got a lot of retired people and little kids there too at the park, and the bathrooms are shut down. So our questions from, as we've been talking about, are mainly kind of what are they going for? We want to, we're comfortable paying our fair share. That's not the issue. But, what are the user fees for? And what are they going to specifically go toward? And could you open our bathrooms? And those are kind of our biggest concerns.
And Donna, I do want Darren to go ahead and let you know why the bathrooms are closed, because it's been a horrible problem that we've been experiencing in Gladstone for the last several weeks. So Darren.
Yeah, so the main reasons the restrooms are closed, and they're closed pretty much in all the parks right now. A lot of that is due to the vandalism and graffiti. We have been getting bombarded with graffiti and vandalism in our parks, particularly the restroom buildings. We closed them down when we got the freezing weather. We've kept them closed since then. We are actually doing maintenance to them. We will be painting all of the restrooms on the inside to get rid of any of the graffiti and stuff like that that is, you know, all over the place in these restrooms. So they will open back up, hopefully before, not too far from now, but we are looking, you know, to do some things to hopefully deter some of that graffiti and vandalism and things like that. So bear with us. We will get them back open. We just need a little bit of time.
Okay, I appreciate knowing that, because then when people ask us, we have some information to give back to them. Thanks, Darren.
You bet.
Hi, this is Scott. I can go next if you'd like.
Go, Scott. Hi.
Hi. So I'll echo a lot of what Jeff had already covered. We are a nonprofit, all volunteer club. All of our positions are volunteer. All of the registration fees go into paying for equipment, field paint, balls, etc., referee fees, and help cover our scholarship kids that are on the school lunch program. So our revenue is basically recycling back into the club. COVID obviously hit all sports really hard. And not only that, but it hit our income pretty hard. So when the fee discussion came up, we're still recovering from COVID and are thankfully starting to build our income back up to be able to purchase new equipment soon. But when it comes to fees, Gladstone Soccer, we like I said, we paint our own fields, and really we're pretty low cost to the city. We just use the grass, which our hope is that the grass gets mowed every so often and gets watered every so often. I mean, seed is a bonus, but we're pretty low maintenance for the city. The goals out of the field we own. We own all the nets, all the goals. We have a volunteer who goes out once a week with the paint sprayer that we own, carrying it down on the trailer from our storage unit, and paints the lines. We measure them out and paint them every season. We work with baseball and softball to have friendly co-use of the space. And I would, so that's basically the extent of our use down there. I will say that fees are something that I have no problem discussing. I'm okay. I'm a little more okay with the thought of per player fee per year than I was with the original thought of per hour, per field, per game. And because that was going to be, and then the comparisons to, well, this is what they do in Tualatin, this is what they do in Sherwood, because the comparisons we were getting they were coming from fields that had turf fields. They had way higher income soccer clubs that are clubs that are businesses, not a nonprofit like we are. We are a very small town club, even comparably to the other clubs in our league. We play against Malala, but we also play against Lake Oswego and Willamette United, which have not only recreational play kids, which is your basic level, but you have your club kids who are paying thousands of dollars to play soccer. Those clubs have 3,000 to 4,000 kids in their club. Oregon City has, upwards of 1,000 to 1,500 kids in their club. We usually have about at most right around 250 kids per. That's a good season. That could be for fall, and then spring is usually around 175 maybe that register for spring soccer because it is obviously off season and baseball. Lots of kids play baseball. So I think it's also important to remember that with the age of the club sports, having community volunteer youth sports that we all grew up playing in is very important these days. it's low cost. It's being a part of the community, playing with kids that you go to school with, playing in your local parks. Those are all big deals. And the more that you get into clubs and club sports, you're paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And everybody wants to raise the next Tiger Woods. Everybody wants to raise the next Kobe Bryant. And everybody's dumping their income into their kids for that type of thing. Youth sports, you know, when we were growing up was, you know, it was a community based. So I think that's important. We want to keep that feeling. My only last thing that I need to say is we experienced the implementation of the entrance fee into Meldrum Bar. It was kind of a weekly disaster because traffic was often out onto River Road. We had people making their own lanes of traffic. At times we had 3 lanes of traffic, people trying to, you know, get in, even people just trying to drop off their kids. They would make their own lane. At one point during the season, I think the city did widen that, and there's talk of having a through lane, but that was a concern of mine going into it, and it definitely is a concern still. The fee entrance needs to be reconstructed. It needs to have some sort of designated lanes, and to be honest, I'm still not in agreement with that our opponents' parents and grandparents to watch their players have to come in and pay, and yet we don't pay to enter their parks. So that's a problem for me still, but you know, the city's getting income from that. My question is, with that income that the city's getting now, and along with fees, I'll reiterate what the others are saying. What exactly is the money going for? Like I said, our club is a pretty low maintenance club. We just need some mowing once in a while. So I think those are things to think about.
Thank you, Scott. So I see we have Marna, we have John, Bill. I don't know, and any of you guys like to provide comments?
I can if you want. John Rourke. Hi, I'm John with Gladstone Softball, the youth softball program in Gladstone. We have girls from 5 to 14 that belong to our club. And we generally use field 2 and 3 down at Meldrum. And we use Derrick's East usually for our teams. We usually have 5 to 7 teams each year, maybe 60 to 80 girls in the spring and 30 to 40 for fall ball. We have mainly rec teams, so a lot of first year kids and a lot of kids that haven't played before. And we also have the lowest fees in the area. We have 25 to 30% of our families are on the free lunch program. So we have to give out a lot of scholarships and stuff. Most of what I wanted to say is similar to baseball and soccer, since we share everything down there. We're all volunteer also, and we're hoping not to have parking fees for the games because we don't pay parking fees anywhere else that we go. We play games in all of Clackamas County. There's like 120 different teams in Clackamas County that we play against, and there's nowhere that we go where there's a fee to park. So it's kind of hard to invite the other teams to Meldrum for the games and have them pay for parking or wait in line to get down to the fields and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't have a lot else to say. Scott and the baseball program pretty much mirrored a lot of things that I was going to say. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to say something. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Bill.
Yeah. I would like for everybody to think about a little bit different on our club, because we're, unlike all the other youth sports, we have a kind of an undefined membership. When the youth sports start, they can pretty much tell you how many people they're going to have and get their fee. And we have people dropping in all the time. We have people signing up all the time. So one thing I think maybe we could look at is a yearly fee for us, not a membership fee, because that'd be a nightmare for us to take care of. People are coming all the time. It would just be really, really difficult for us. So if maybe you could think about a yearly fee for us instead of an individual fee would really be helpful, because I'm not sure how we would collect it. Year to year, we may have somebody want to join 2 weeks before the end of the year. And do we charge them the full 15 or whatever money you were talking about? It's going to be very difficult for us to try to collect that kind of money yearly, all year long. So.
Thank you, Bill. Does any of the elected officials or Parks Board members want to say something at this point, gathering information, or anybody else want to add to this discussion? I've been trying to take notes of common themes in it, and it sounds like better accountability from the city on where the fees would be going is a theme that all of you would like to understand that better. Not so much opposed to the fees, but just again, would like to know where that money is going. I did want to share with you that one of the things Councillor Alexander asked for was in our monthly newsletter, we now have a section in there that talks about how much revenue is coming in from the parking kiosk versus what the expenditures are. And as of July 2021, which was in it when it was implemented, we've had approximately $65,000 come in as revenue. However, to install the kiosk with getting the electrician, purchasing the machine, it was at $83,000. So we are still trying to cover our costs for installing that. So when people ask, where's the revenue going from the parking fee? It's going back into the costs of putting in the kiosk. We expect that to change over the next year or two as the revenues keep coming in. And I also understand that the parking fee is a little bit different than the user fees, but it compounded when the city attempted to do both at the same time. And so really what we're here is, we appreciate your honesty on that. We all love our parks, but it does cost to maintain them. So can we find a balance that's fair and equitable to everyone? And that is what the City Council is going to be discussing probably at their March 8th meeting. Darren, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this discussion? I know some questions came up about, where does the fees go for the sports, and maybe you can touch on that, or even whether or not a yearly fee for pickleball is something that the city could entertain.
Yeah, I can do that. As far as the yearly fee for pickleball, I don't see that as being an issue. Again, a lot lower maintenance than what baseball would do, or even soccer for that. I think one thing I look at, and I think Scott kind of touched on it a little bit, is, we don't do a whole lot for soccer, but we do quite a bit for soccer. And, the grass has got to be mowed, the grass has got to be watered, the grass has got to be fertilized. That's about all we do for them, but there's obviously a cost associated with that. When you get into the baseball and softball side of things, we do a spring, we'll call it cleanup or field prep, to get all the fields ready to play. There's a cost associated with that. We prep the fields before every single game that is played at either Derek's or at Meldrum Bar, and there's a cost associated with that. One thing that I realized going into this, we as the city are never ever going to be able to recover our costs by charging the user groups. It would be an outrageous amount of money that nobody would want to pay. But I do think that there is some things we can do to help offset that cost. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're never going to get to a point where everything gets paid for. And I think we as the city realize that. And, there's not anything we can do with that. And I'm fine with that. It's just at some point we need to, and what Jeff was talking about was, maybe instead of the city constantly before every baseball game go out and prep all the fields, maybe that's something that the sports leagues can do to help offset some of those costs for the city. There's all kinds of different things that can be done to help offset some of those costs. But I think at the end of the day, with the dollar amount that the city puts out for our sports groups, there won't be a fee that's going to be high enough to charge these people. And I don't expect that we will ever get there.
I think Scott, I think you're getting close to there with using the fee entrance though, because fall season, we probably just counting the number of games that we had down there, not only, Gladstone residents that don't have the pass, but incoming families on weekends. I mean, the 65,000, I think a large chunk of that is coming from fall sports. I don't think that you'd have that if you didn't have, if you were just relying on fishing or, people entering the park to go look at the river.
Thank you, Scott. Councilor Hartman.
Thank you. Councilor Todd actually was before me, so if she wants to go, you can go, Councilor Todd.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions because I did notice that Jeff had said that there was a move towards baseball taking care of the fields at 100%. Is that what Darren was just talking about? Or because you had said that there was going to be a move towards that. I hadn't heard anything about that.
So there was, that was like one of the very first, we've met a few times now, and I can't remember if this is the first conversation or second conversation we had with them, but that was brought up, and we had said, well, we would need right now the city drags the fields for us. We do all the chalking, we rake it out, we got to run the sprinklers after every game. So there's considerable amount of prep that we do now. They used to do the chalking for us, but we do our own chalking now. So they basically drag the fields, which is fantastic. But to do that, you need some sort of vehicle to drag it around. That's something that we can't just leave parked down in Meldrum. We know what'll happen if that happens. Yeah. So the problem becomes, well, we'll take care of our fields. The only thing we don't do now is drag the field, okay? Mm-hmm. But we would need a vehicle to do that. We have our own screens. We do everything ourselves. Where do we store it? Mm-hmm. And we said, if you could supply us with a building, maybe a big enough building where soccer and softball and baseball could all share it and keep our equipment down there, we would take that on. We'd be okay with that. But then we got into it's a flood zone or something. You can't build a building down there. You know what I mean? It's always more complicated than it seems.
It's always more complicated.
But we can't. We do have something up at Derek's, mm-hmm. and for tournaments, we literally drive the tractor down, across McLaughlin and down Meldrum, and we park it down there for the tournaments. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a facility to store everything at down there. So if that was somehow we would be able to get that, I think that soccer and baseball and softball would maybe agree to do what is remaining. But right now, I've been on the board of baseball for 8 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. And the fields used to be, when I first started, were very well maintained. And it's been dwindling a little bit. And I know that it's resources, lack of resources. Mm-hmm. Totally understand that. Now the preseason prep was I'll just be blunt, it was horrible this year. Okay, it's been better in past years. This year, I've been around baseball all my life, and what they did this year was it was almost like they dump some turfus down and spread it around on top of the hard ground. And that was it. And I got permission with the city to do it correctly. And we brought a quad down there and we got a deep drag and we dug it up and we marked all the sprinkler heads and we made sure we were clear of everything. And the fields were fantastic. It took me and myself and two other helpers about 3 hours one day to do our two main fields. So it wasn't a ton of effort. We did it 2 more times throughout the year because it just needed it. Mm-hmm. The city just runs a quick screen over it and calls it good, which helps. I'm not going to deny that it helps, but it's not really a lot of prep. I would almost rather do it ourselves if we were able to somehow have the equipment down there, because that would be done with more, more thought, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sort of leads into my next question from Scotty. Scott, do you guys have a storage unit down there?
No, we pay for one in Clackamas.
Yeah,
though I was just thinking of this though, as the last meeting we met with Parks, the sports clubs met with Parks a few weeks ago, talking about the different options or things that they were talking about doing down at Meldrum. And I had brought up, there are 2 upper units that are just grass areas as you enter Meldrum Bar that are unused, that are up by where the fee station is, that I'm assuming is out of floodplain area, that I don't know if that could ever be considered for a multi-use storage, small storage building or something. As you drive in, there's a space where there's the boulders on your right that has that grass area. And then at the top of the hill, there's the grass area to the left that's behind the trees. So, just throwing it out there, but if there's flood, worries, that could be a possibility.
And Pickleball has a storage unit at Max Patterson.
We purchased 2. Yes, we have 2 that store our nets and balls and things that the club purchased.
Okay. And Jackie, where are we with the through lane for 2 different things once again, but with the through lane for the Meldrum Bar?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that the property that Scott just mentioned is where the through lane is going to go. Eventually, our desire is to construct a through lane on that side so that we would have 2 lanes out there, and Darren can speak to that a little bit more. Currently, that property is zoned multifamily. And so the city would have to go through a comp plan change to also make that a through lane, which is also part of why we can't store anything out on that piece of property.
I'm trying to think if that's all I have right now. That's it right now. Go ahead, Councilor Hartman.
While we're on the topic of storage, the Garden Club has a shipping container as their storage, don't they? Why is that something that the sports users could utilize?
We do get temporary permission from the city to have a container down there near Field 4, which is back by the golf course and stuff. But then we have to remove that. So it's set there temporarily during the season. It's big enough to hold, it's a container that's big enough to hold our pitching mounds, rakes, bags of chalk, and a chalker. It's not big enough to hold a vehicle and all the screens and everything else. That stuff is held up at Derek's, where we have a lot bigger shed up there.
But Darren, is that not something that we can do for them as a more permanent structure for now, considering that the Garden Club seems to have one?
Yeah, I think that, anything can be done. We talked about what Scott was referring to was the site plan meeting that we had here a few weeks ago. We talked about including a storage, something for storage with that site plan. The exact location is obviously to be determined. He did, what Scott was referring to was, I think when you drive into the park, kind of on your left-hand side, if you take that all the way down toward Jensen Road, which would put us kind of right behind what they call Field 5, I mean, if you were going to do a storage location, I think that would probably be your best location for that. As far as, you know, purchasing or anything like that, I don't know that the budget is going to have that in it right now to be able to purchase that. But I think if you were going to store something, that would probably be one of your best locations in that area there.
Cool. So I'm trying to look at this discussion, you know, knowing that we're doing the Meldrum sidebar plan, looking at this in the future and looking at it, you know, that we want to also charge out, you know, outside of this conversation, folks who would like to rent our new and improved field that we hopefully will have one day, and look at it as an internal fee, whether that's a resident fee, similar to what Stephanie was talking about, and an out-of-city fee, considering that their taxes don't pay for these things. For one, I like the hourly rental because it sort of stays in line with standards of what other cities are doing, so that it's not too much of a difference for incoming teams. But I am open to hearing what the teams that are affected by that feel in that matter, in terms of if the player feel is more equitable, or player per player fee is more equitable for them, sure, let's go with that route. I think in terms of you know, picnic benches and the tennis court, you know, I look at it, the tennis courts where pickleball plays, as like, if someone would like to rent those courts for a private party, if they want to have tennis lessons, that is how I'm looking at it, as a, you know, an hourly rate. And, you know, just making sure that we're covering the cost for the folks that maintain that. I think what I'm hearing from all of this too is that maybe we need another FTE to maintain our parks, which is another discussion. But I would like to see how much that would be. Like, how much are these fees going to go to someone to manage this? Because I don't know, Darren, you have enough people, like you said, to manage the hourly fees of everything here. Or if I want to rent a, you know, picnic bench at Max Patterson, I know that I'm not calling you to rent that for an hour, you know. So making sure we're being mindful and cognizant that we don't have a parks department that focuses just on parks. And if we need one, you know, maybe that's something we also should discuss, and how much that is. Like, what does that salary look like? You know, maybe that's where the fees are going, also including that in the conversation. Those are all the thoughts I have right now. I understand that it sounds like as long as we're charging, our team should be getting something in return, but you know, what are they getting in that matter? So.
Well,
this is Marna Barnes. Is it okay for me to speak?
Yes, this is a public meeting, Marna. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Two things, and kind of piggybacking on what Anessa is saying. I think if we look a little deeper at our parks, in my opinion, we need to be looking at, are we operating city parks, or are we attempting to replicate North Clackamas Parks and Rec District and have a regional park? And if we want regional parks, why? We have regional parks all around us with North Clackamas Parks and Rec. But going back to what Anessa said about establishing a parks district within the city, you know, Happy Valley has done that. There's other cities that have done that. Of course, the cost is going to go up to the taxpayers because we're going to be adding another level of government in our city. But that's an option. But in that case, we're still running a city park and we're still offering regional amenities. So people would be using our parks, but not paying for them. You know, and I guess that's not such a bad thing. We go over and use the dog park in Happy Valley. We don't have to pay. But I guess my biggest concern is, why is the city of Gladstone hung up on operating regional parks? If these are actually city parks, why are we trying to run regional parks? Why don't we just go with North Clackamas and have a regional park district, or a regional, put our parks in with a regional park? I know that doesn't seem to be a popular idea, but that sure makes sense to me. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And oh, one more thing. I think it's very important that we have equity in the way we manage our parks. And I think that if we're going to have a large group of people, you know, a club that has close to 300 members that only has maybe 15% of those members are actually city residents, I think there's a equity issue with that when you're talking about who is using our parks and who is paying for our parks. So with that, I will remute myself. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. And Marty, I wanted to jump in because I know your concern is the parking fee. You had made a comment that parents are being told that they can't stay and wait. And I just want to make sure that we can be better communication. I know Police Chief Schmerber and his police officers aren't communicating that, but if you're telling us that is happening, we need to make sure that we make sure it's not happening out there. So we can improve our communication if there is enforcement down there. Parents are allowed to sit and wait there if they're to pick up their kid. Obviously, if it's 30 minutes to an hour, that is parking, but I just wanted to know what else we can do to help with that situation there.
Well, that would help, better communication, because depending upon who is talking to our parents, it's different across the board. I mean, some parents I've been told have been followed out of the park and stopped, so they pay. So I've had complaints from parents and emails and things from parents saying just that they've been treated unfairly. So that would be my biggest concern, because that reflects on the park and the city of Gladstone, but it also reflects on us as a program.
Jackie, thanks for doing that. That was on my list as well, because if you're dropping off your child or picking up your child, if you're waiting in the car and they're passing, you don't have to have a pass. Correct.
Okay, correct. That's news to us. So that's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Well, this is Scott. Yeah, that part needs to, I mean, I know the city's looking into it, but it really needs to be marked down there. I'll reiterate, it was getting to be dangerous situations during the fall. You had, two lanes going out. At one point I saw 4 lanes, 2 going out, 2 going in. Parents were letting their kids get out because, the line was taking 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get into the park, and parents were trying to get the kids there on time. It was an angry situation in many situations. So, things there needs to be better signage at least down there.
Nancy Turner.
Yes, thank you. I'm very conflicted on this one. I spent like 3 or 4 years when my children were little being the registrar for soccer. So I totally understand the amount of volunteerism and hours that people put in to get the kids on the fields for any sport that they do. And I truly appreciate that. I just wanted to let everybody know that. I think when you're fielding teams and sports in a community, you kind of have to look for a benefit versus a loss. And the benefit to the community is that children are busy and families are engaged. And to me, that's a huge part of this, is that we as a community value having these teams available for Gladstone kids. There's also a reciprocity between parks in that I can go to another park and be there. And so that's where I kind of get lost about Meldrum and the whole charging. I understand that it's a regional access to the river for boating. I know that historically it's been that way, and it always will be unless there's some way to lock down that boat ramp. But but I also understand on the other side of that it takes a lot of money to prepare and keep and maintain a field that's safe, and facilities like bathrooms and play structures and all of that. So there's a balancing act here that I hope we can somehow land on, because I see both sides. But I worry about overcharging, and I'm wondering if we can look at a per team fee as opposed to an individual fee. If that might be a little easier way to handle that. I think looking at hours is really difficult. Again, coming from the point of just trying to register kids and get them on the field and coaches to be there and all of that. So I understand that whole organization, but I just wonder if there's another way, and we can start as a gradual fee, like maybe this next year looking at, and then at a lower fee, but it's a per team fee that each sport puts out. And then also really keeping track of the number of volunteerism that is coming into this. Darren also keeping a really good track on costs so that we can really let people know what's happening. I don't know. I hate to take the kids off the fields, and that's the last thing I want to see happen, both as a resident and a parent when my kids were playing, and as a registrar of one of those clubs. So that makes sense?
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. If I can jump in real quick, I spent some time down at the school administration today talking how they, asking them how they handled their stuff. And that thing about the team fee, like, you got 10 people, $10 a kid, that's $100. Give it to them for 85. Help both ends of the spectrum, save the team little, and it's not, lowers the per person and the team fee, and then you get a break, And the other thing they said that was interesting to me, I didn't know we had churches and stuff where they go and pay them to play soccer and stuff, and there's some income coming in for that. And what they have at the administration, the people I was talking to, said they have 2 user fee structures, and this goes back to what Councilor Hartman was talking about, because that's what I asked is, how come the people and the kids in Gladstone don't get a deal or a break or get to play free? And she said, no, we have 2 user fee structures. It's called in district and out of district. And the people out of district pay a little bit more. So the people that are Gladstone teams, or, it says Gladstone soccer, Gladstone, they get a little bit of a break. So I didn't know when that was coming in, but I think the team fee thing and the in and out of district, like Councilor Hartman was talking, I think they're both things to be looked at and see how we can use them to our advantage for the Gladstone citizens. And that's all I had.
Thank you. I thank Jeff, and then next Councilor Todd.
Okay, I just wanted to, I don't know if I was very clear when I spoke earlier, but Gladstone Junior Baseball does not have an issue with paying a fee for the field use. We would much prefer the structure of $15 per player or whatever that would be, rather than an hourly fee or anything else. Some teams practice twice a week. Some coaches prefer to practice 3 or 4 times a week, and trying to keep track of that, especially with baseball, where rain would cancel it out one day and then you wouldn't practice, or because you didn't practice, it's a last minute, we're going to practice Friday night now because we couldn't practice 2 days earlier this week. I think the hourly thing would just be it'd be really difficult for us to keep track of, as well as the city. But we have no problem paying a fee per player to do this. That's not a big deal. If we can plan on it. We're doing signups right now. We chose as a board a month ago to not raise fees this year, not knowing what this is going to happen, how this is going to work moving into this spring season. But we made the decision to keep the registration cost the exact same as it was last year. 1, because we're still within the COVID times. People are still struggling. And 2, we can plan on doing more fundraising this year if necessary. So we can add a fundraiser to make up for any deficit that we might come to during registration. We have no problem doing these fees. The bigger problem is the having incoming teams pay parking or something. If we could figure that part out, And I know that's not easy, but having our incoming teams last year when I was calling the other coaches and saying, hey, by the way, you're going to have to pay to watch your kid play at Meldrum, the reaction was brutal. Okay. So if we could somehow figure out how the incoming teams would not have to pay to watch their kids play baseball, soccer, softball, whatever it is, that is way more important to us than a $15 per player user fee. Whether we get what I think we should get out of that or not, at least we can account for that. We can plan for that. And we don't have to piss off incoming teams. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just kind of how it went down. There was not a single coach that I called last year that said, oh, I got it, I understand. Let me call my parents and inform them. It was, are you kidding me? I got to call my parents and tell them they got to pay to come watch them. And I said, yes, unfortunately, I'm sorry. That's way more of a big deal than the user fee. So I just wanted to be clear about that. That Gladstone Junior Baseball is on board, whatever it takes to get, to help Meldrum Bar out and keep that a really nice park. As long as it's not an outrageous cost, $15 or $20 per player, we can plan on, and we can move forward with that. And I just wanted to, I guess, make that point clear.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Counselor Todd?
Yeah, I just, it's once again, it's difficult because the user fees do get put together with the parking fee quite a bit. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear. We have 3 Gladstone parks that are used for youth sports, pickleball, whatever, right? So we have Derek's, Meldrum, and Max Patterson. Is that it? Darren, is that right? Okay, so, and then only one of them has a pay to park scenario. Is there, not trying to put another monkey wrench in, but just a different way to think about this, is there a way to have the user fees be different, or for the parks that aren't creating income in some way from having parking fees? So maybe the sports that play at, and I know that baseball and softball probably play at both, but have it be Max Patterson, that's a user fee. Derek's Field, have that be a user fee, sort of figure out how many teams normally play there, and have the money that's coming from the parking fee, trying once again to try and parcel those out, not having it feel like you're being double hit for those teams down there, soccer, baseball type thing. It was just something that popped into my head because it really is one regional park that has its own set of players there that are sort of getting hit twice. Even though if you are a Gladstone resident, you won't be paying to park. I just saw registration, I think for softball and baseball came up, and you don't have to be a resident of Gladstone to play on those teams, correct?
Well, technically, yeah, sorry. Technically, you kind of do. If you if you attend Gladstone schools and you live out of district, you're automatically able to play. If you live within the Gladstone city limits, you are in the Gladstone system. There are a number of players though that don't go to Gladstone schools and live outside the district that want to play for Gladstone because whether they don't like the coach that they ended up with in Oregon City or something, for whatever reason, those we do have to go through a process. At least baseball does. We have to go talk to the area head of that city. We have to say, hey, we have your player. And that's to protect them from not having, all of a sudden that age group doesn't have enough players to form a team. They would then veto that and that player could not come play for Gladstone, even though they requested it. So yes and no to your answer.
Okay, I had just seen it on Gladstone Chit Chat or something like that, where it was posted, it said, need not be a Gladstone resident to register. And I can't remember if it was baseball or softball. So I didn't know that. So that leads into a whole other thing, because being on city council, our main job is, I know that it's uncomfortable and it's hard to tell other teams coming in that they have to pay for something, but it's also beholden to us to make sure that first and foremost, our parks are taken care of for our community members and who are already paying tax. So it's like this double-edged sword. Well, I don't even know if it's double. It's like a triple, quadruple-edged sword. So just want to tell you where I was coming from.
Tracy, the softball
always takes the Gladstone kids first, but if we have to fill up a team, then it's similar to baseball, where it could be some kids that live over by Putnam, and the North Clackamas softball closed down last year after the COVID. So we may have a few intermingled North Clackamas kids that live right over by where Putnam is to fill up some of the Gladstone teams this year, only because they have nowhere else to play. So
that might have been where I saw it, was maybe on the softball registration announcement. Okay,
we didn't put anything on there about the softball for that, but can I add one more thing too? When we do our registration every year, it starts the first part of January. I think baseball starts the middle of December or whatever. So if we decide on some kind of fees, and we're not opposed to a per player fee or anything like that too, it would be nice to know those things ahead of time for when we're planning for registration fees and stuff, and for sponsorships and other things, that we could know that before, like, because our season's actually kind of started now since the registration's going. So it would be nice to know those things ahead of time if we're going to be charged some extra fees and stuff.
I just looked, it was Gladstone Soccer Association, I guess, that had the notice that said that you do not have to live in Gladstone, but they might be in the same scenario you are too, you know.
So Tracy, this is Scott. No, you do not have to be a Gladstone resident. However, 95% of our players are Gladstone residents. If we don't take the few that also want to come in, we generally try and make sure that any kid that registers for soccer gets to play. And you may have, you know, especially at the smaller ages, when you're talking about like 4 and 5 year olds, you know, like you might have a cousin who you know lives in Westland that wants to play with this cousin. They're still, you know, if we're doing player fees, that person will still be charged. So they're still paying the registration that goes into the club. And also, if we don't take a small portion of non-resident players, a lot of times that could mean that if we don't take these 2 or 3 players, that 9 Gladstone kids don't get to play because we don't have enough to make a team of that age group.
Right.
So the discussion of non-resident resident is really silly to me, because you're just talking about kids playing sports. And in your Gladstone soccer, Gladstone baseball, Gladstone softball, the majority of the kids are Gladstone. I think what happens when you talk about getting double hit, even the incoming teams, they're paying their own registration fees at their own clubs. Those fees are paying for their own parks. We're hitting them double by charging them to come into our park, when we aren't hit double by entering their parks. You know, we're not being hit to get to enter their parks. That's where the parking fee comes up as a problem with other clubs. That we're the only club, and I'm sure this is with baseball, but we're the only club in soccer in our soccer 5 league that's currently charging anybody to enter. So, you know, and then when you're talking about double fees, if I'm just like baseball and softball, I have no problem paying a reasonable fee. It's best to pay per player for us, because if you're talking about per hour, the benefit of being a volunteer coach for at least soccer is that you're able to decide your own practice times that fit your schedule. And if anybody has ever tried to run a youth sport before, it's all volunteers, and you rely on those coaches to volunteer their hours of time. And we basically tell them, find an open patch of green and go and take your team out there. And, you know, share the grass as much as possible with everyone else. It would be near impossible for me to try and keep track of when everyone is trying to schedule a practice. And I don't want to get to the point where I tell a coach, well, you can't have that time because this person has that time.
I get it. Thank you. So what I'm hearing, Jackie, and counselors, maybe you're hearing the same, is that I'm believing pickleball sort of is on a different place where they want to have like a yearly fee. They also, 75–80% of their members are not Gladstone residents. And I do think it is important because that's who we're beholden to, are the residents here. Mm-hmm. And then the other teams that play at the other fields that want to play have a per person thing. Is that what you're hearing? Am I hearing that?
Yeah, I think the only thing is what would we, the yearly fee for pickleball, I understand, but what happens when another organization wants to come in and use our tennis court? You know, like we have to figure out, it's not just them that want to use the courts, you know, like they look beautiful now, and, you know, people could certainly come and want to do private lessons or host, you know, like said, birthday party with tennis or whatever it may be. That, like, what would that fee be for that particular case? I do think that the discussion around how much the parking fee is affecting those who are using Meldrum Bar, it has to be talked about, because like we've heard many times, no other place charges a parking fee for the attendants to come in addition to utilizing the field. But all the other things, well, without how do you say it, Diedrich's? Diedrich's field, besides that one as well. But I think there's like three different avenues and discussions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Complicated.
With that.
We could charge for parking in Max Patterson.
Yeah.
Stephanie?
Just hearing that the parking fee is the biggest problem. That's what I'm getting out of this whole thing. Parking fee. They'll pay user fees. They'll work with it. They'll figure out something, you know, team fees or something. But the parking is what is not going over very big. So that's what I'm hearing.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes, hi. Kind of like Jeff, I could talk about this stuff forever. I have so many ideas. And I'm on the Parks and Recs board, as I had mentioned, and I'm making lots of notes for further discussions. As we all agree, my son is in soccer. I dealt with the same thing at the parking structure, and I pulled in. I was about 5 minutes from when we had to be there, and I was like, what is happening? So I agree with that 100%. One of the things, I know it's been installed, but I could propose is that machine goes down towards the river where the people are coming in to use the water recreationally. And so a couple of the notes that I made as far as fees go is that, you know, a sports use fee is charged for the teams that are using, you know, for the sports, Dierksfield, Meldrum Bar, etc. Parking fees at the recreational parks, which I know that Meldrum Bar is a recreational park, but further down, I don't know how that could be done. Again, I don't have the solution, but the people that are coming in to fish, stock their boat, you know, maybe even just play on the waterfront, that makes sense. I mean, you know, when we go to Silver Falls, we have to pay a fee to use that beautiful area. As someone mentioned, and as I mentioned before, we have some of the most beautiful parks in Gladstone, and people want to use them. And then as far as fees for parks, like at Max Patterson, I don't necessarily think a fee, somebody should come pay to go play on the structures. Like someone said, you don't have to go pay to, you know, use a pet park somewhere and take your dog in, but you're paying for the use of the facilities during events. You know, again, the picnic tables. I want to rent this picnic table for 2 hours so I can throw a birthday party for my kids. You know, it's $40 to rent it for 2 hours. The only conflict I see, as I said, is the conflict of charging the sports fee and the parking fee at Meldrum Bar, which has been the biggest topic of conversation here. And that's why I kind of feel if that machine could be moved down a little bit further, and how you would patrol, you know, whether or not people are parking there and paying to go, you know, how you control what people do. I believe in the honesty method. You know, I think good 80% of our people are going to do the honest thing and pay, you know, whenever they have a fee at a park. So these are some of my thoughts. I'm, like I said, I'm definitely making notes, hopefully when we have our next Parks and Recs meeting, as well as I know that City Council, this is a big discussion, and we will totally be considering all these points. Thank you.
Clear as mud, right? It's difficult to come to a consensus, and that's why I said this is a very emotional topic, but we all agree that we love the Gladstone community. And you know, one of the takeaways I'm getting from this is that this group probably should be meeting more often. The city wants to be a better partner in the community. And I think just hearing from all of you has been very helpful to the elected officials and the parks and board members. And so we should think about maybe doing this on a quarterly basis. But I'm hearing the same common themes as what all of you are. And usually that's what rises to the top. And I think what we'll probably do, if everybody is in agreement, is staff will regroup with the elected officials, the Parks Board members, and then I'd like to have one more meeting with this group before we go to City Council in March to talk about what we're going to recommend, because we don't want you to just read about it in a staff report. I know everybody's busy, but do you think that we could all come to an agreement to meet one more time before March 8th on this topic?
Yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of head nods for that. Yeah. And that'll give Darren and I some time to kind of digest everything we've heard and make some good recommendations back to the City Council. I do agree that it seems to be the parking fee and user fees at Meldrum Bar Park. There's like a double fee there, so we need to work through that. And it sounds like all of the organizations understand the user fee, but they'd like to know more about how that money will be spent as well. And then the children's course, obviously we can do better about communicating with the parking fee to help parents that are just going down to drop off or pick up their students. But again, I'd like everybody to be involved in this conversation in probably about a month if we can do that.
Jackie, the all of a sudden I just went completely blank. The stand there at Meldrum Bar where you have to pay, that cannot be moved, correct? That was already, it is there.
It's engineered, and I think Darren can tell you why it wasn't down where Stephanie believes it should, because that is a wetland area, flood zone. And so where we put it, we looked at all kinds of options, and that was the only location that the fee machine could go.
Yeah, Stephanie, that's exactly what I thought too. I always envisioned it down lower when we were talking about it, and it wasn't until afterwards. And I don't think that's been communicated to a lot of the groups as well, because we know that internally from reading, you know, your wonderful notes and stuff, but I don't know if everybody knows that, so.
And that's another thing that I was going to mention is one of the things that I'm hearing through and through, like I'm on the Parks and Rec board and I didn't know that. I've only been on it for a year, so I'm sure I would have known it if I was on it last year, the year before when this was implemented. But communication with the community is key, because they're right. I mean, they're saying, okay, now we have to pay this money, but where's the money going to? You know, we do have to have some time to accumulate the money in order to put it back into the parks. Right now, we're currently discussing how to improve our parks on the Parks Board over the next couple of years as fees start to come in. Better playground, better turf for playgrounds, you know, helping the sports fields. But we've just started it. And so I understand the community is like, we're paying all this, but like she said, my restrooms are shut. Well, there's a reason. So I feel, I don't know, we're small enough. Maybe we just put a loudspeaker over Gladstone. Hey, Gladstone, this is what's happening. You know, it's difficult. Not everybody reads their emails, text messages, but I don't have the solution, but somehow better communication with what's going on in our community, I think would be wonderful for everyone.
Can I ask a question or maybe make a recommendation to consider? Is that perhaps just waiving the parking fee during sports events, I mean, for all youth activity down there, and having a sign that kind of folds on itself. So, I mean, and waiving that fee, the parking fee at Meldrum, and somehow communicating that with a sign that says all other uses, you know, pay your fee. But if that would probably still block up people trying to drive through though. And that's an issue.
That was one of the points that I have in my notes, Nancy, free parking during sports events. That's something that we will circle back with you and the elected officials about. Darren and I will kind of summarize the main points, but yes, that was one of them that I noted as well. Well, again, I appreciate everyone's time. I know we're all busy, and Haley will be reaching out to you for a doodle poll, and we'll try to get a meeting late February before we go to the City Council in March. and have another very good conversation. So thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.